Being a conversationalist has taught me that some of life's greatest value comes from the stories, journeys, and experiences of others. Through this podcast, I'll be speaking with some of the most tapped in and inspiring individuals from various different industries to unpack the gems behind successfully navigating our way through life with purpose. This is Candid Conversations on the Nicola Dawkins podcast. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Candid Conversations on the Nicola Dawkins podcast. I am joined today by Shola, otherwise known as BestLookingPT. And Shola's journey we're here to unpack today is really, in essence, at the age of 16, you were sentenced to 18 years in jail for firearms. You spent the best part of 10 years behind bars. And now you're basically using your life experiences to inspire others, share the gems, and we're going to tap into the faith element of your journey as well.
Amen.
So
Amen.
I'm glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
How's your week been? It's Friday, so let's just kick off.
Oh, thank God it's Friday. It's been a long one, but the weather's out. It's summertime. It's just, ready to go.
Cool. Where do we start with your journey? Because what I want to tap into is Shola in the younger years, because it's from the age of 12, I know, is when you sort of were involved in maybe some road activities or when you were influenced to go that way, and that's very young. So what I want to tap into is, what did childhood look like for you that brought you into that space at the age of 12?
If I was being honest, my childhood consisted of obviously my environment. I'm not going to use it as an excuse, but played part as to why I ended up on the roads or on the path that I chose. And obviously not having my dad around in terms of a figure was confusing. So, I went to an all-boys school, and that was a transition for me because a lot of my siblings are female. So now you're going to an all-boys school, and I guess for me, everything seemed to be like a test. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Because you're dealing with a lot of male testosterone. And at a young age, you don't understand what a male testosterone is. You don't understand even the identity of what a man should be like, especially if you don't have a figure in your life, a father figure, or even just a role model. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So I guess that, alongside other factors in my life at the time, it stirred me to just be angry. And I used to have a lot of anger issues as a kid, and I just got into fights. So I got into fights at school, and it didn't matter who I was fighting. It didn't matter if there was 6 foot something and whatever, or if it was, you know what I mean. So I got into fights. Then before you know it, me and my cousins and school friends was just out and bad, just going around doing all type of craziness. So, but we didn't see it as that at the time. We just thought it's a laugh. We're just having fun. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And you don't take things serious. Then when you now get kicked out of school and all these other things, and then you're referred to a pupil referral unit. At that time, I didn't even understand as to how I understand it now. It's grooming you. It's just grooming you, preparing you for if you want to continue on prison. You know what I'm trying to say? You're being locked in classrooms. You're not allowed no more than 3-4 kids in one particular space. Like just all these different type of special attention that you was getting. However, thinking it's benefiting you, but it wasn't, because what are you learning? Do you get what I'm trying to say? What are you taking from it? So, and then obviously that particular time, Peru used to finish earlier than normal schools. So you've got 2-3 hours in your hand to do what? So you end up just going outside other schools and this and that. And before you know it, you're meeting different type of people, and that's how it started for me.
The environment, because I too was actually kicked out of school at the age of 14. Right. Not a lot of people know that. I have said it before, but it's something that the environment you are put in, it can set you up to fail if you haven't got a particular mindset, or in your case, you're a male, so it's anyway going to be, in my opinion, harder for you to regulate your weight outside of that. Whereas for a girl or a female, the odds are even. You can choose which direction really you're going to go in.
I think especially as a black male, especially as a black boy, black man, do you get what I'm saying? With the way society has been portraying us for the longest, and labeling us, especially at a young age, you don't even take in the psychological effect it has on you, which is why I guess you grow up, and now for me, I can recognize where things went wrong, or where things went left, or what was said that triggered me, that made me act or behave or think a certain way. So whereas now, so I've just got that self-awareness now and that foresight. I guess that God's given me to be able to say, right, you know what, I see X, Y, and Z, you know what I'm saying? And be able to, I wouldn't even say rectify that, because at the end of the day, I feel like some experiences in life you have to go through. Yeah. Do you get what I'm trying to say? However, you go through it learning from it. It's when you're not learning that it becomes destructive. So, yeah. Something
I did pick up from you is definitely your level of self-awareness. And I actually wrote that down. I'm going to show you after. But something I've recognized. Honestly, something I've recognized with you is your level of self-awareness, your accountability. Yeah. Although you are aware of how the system is set up, and of course throughout the conversation we're going to unpack that, but you don't necessarily blame the system. You are quite, you take yourself accountability of where you placed yourself to getting yourself in a certain situation, which is highly respectable, and I think probably credit partly so to where you are today and what you're doing today. But I'm going to reverse slightly just back to that era of age 12, getting into kind of road activities and things. Do you think it was having a lack of a father figure that steered you in that direction? What was it? What was that point for you? That did someone recruit you? What made you feel like, yeah, this is the path I'm going to walk in?
I mean, all right, so we've got the culture today, the younger generation that's coming up under us now, and they can make money out of anything. They've got the will and the freedom to do anything. Does that make sense? So, you know, whereas when we was growing up, I feel like if you take the music scene, for instance, we had So Solid. Before So Solid, we wasn't in the industry like that. Do you get what I'm trying to say? We wasn't opening doors like that. Whereas now, fast forward, you've got 101 Stormzy's. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the door's open. Do you get what I'm saying? So
you've got that example of seeing, oh, they've done it, so someone looks like me's done it, I can do it too.
Exactly. So now replicate that to your environment or the roads or whatever that circumstance for me I was going through at life, and the culture then anyway. I think the only black R&B singers in terms of UK wise was Eternal, Cleopatra, Kelly LaRock, all these type of, but now you've got Ray Black, you've got 100 different black girls that can now come into, I remember a lot of girls and boys I went to school with that was, whether it was music or whatever talent they had, they were super talented. Now you don't see them no more. There was no outlet. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So me growing up, there was no outlet for me to, let's say, in terms of fitness or in terms of business or things that I now want to pursue as a young man or as a young black man. Does that make sense? Whereas now these kids, they've got outlets. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
And social media, which can be deemed as negative by some, but I always boil it down to, well, what is your feed? Who are you following? And actually social media is a very powerful tool, and I think it's shown us all what is possible, and just being that much closer to, you know, back in the day. How old are you now? 32. So we're similar. I'm 30, and back in the day it was magazines, Word Up magazine, all this. That's the closest you can get to the people that inspire you. Whereas now you're literally sitting on an Instagram or a TikTok and you're seeing firsthand the moves that are being made, and it feels that much more attainable. So I think that's something that the younger generation have, as well as seeing people that look like you, actually realizing, oh, it's attainable. So that's good. So moving on slightly from age 12, okay, you found yourself in the road, and at age 16, which is so young, you found yourself being faced with a firearms charge. Talk me through that.
So, what, the actual situation?
No, not
Or just
necessarily
the process,
exactly.
just like how
Yeah,
it made me feel?
yeah.
Okay, I guess that was a shock to the system. I think things just got real. Do you get what I'm saying? And I guess my belief system at the time, which is relatively still the same now, was to just take it on the chin, you know, like at the end of the day, whether I was in the right or wrong, I found myself in a situation that I didn't want to be in. And sometimes some people in that situation will look for ways to squirm out of it. Do you get what I'm saying? And for me, I've never been a squirmer. I've never been, do you get what I'm saying? I know how to use my head. However, I also know how to take responsibility. So, you know, like that situation there, it changed my life, if I was being honest. Especially knowing that the circumstances surrounding and even that situation, I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't guilty. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, I get it, but it's lack of education. You know, it was lack of education. It was lack of knowing what my rights were, not listening to the right advice at the time. But I feel like to an extent, me and my family was exploited through that process because that's what the system does. You know, the justice system, that's what they do. There's so many examples of it. I feel like because we're in the UK, we don't really take in miscarriages of justice, you know.
Unless you're involved or it's affecting you directly.
Yeah, exactly. And then when we do see a story come up, like the Birmingham 7 and all these other people, it's like, rah, da-da-da-da-da-da. But no, it's been going on. It's just that the UK have a subtle way of doing things.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say? Such as joint enterprise, such as IPP and definite sentence for prisons where you don't have a release date.
Which, so IPP, so my understanding of that, correct me if I'm wrong, so you're not given a release date, but also isn't IPP, if you are released, you can literally pee on the street and you're back.
Yeah.
So it's basically, in any case, it's a lifetime sentence, because even when you're not behind bars, you step on the wrong side of the road, they can just recall you and that's that.
Yeah, and I've been a victim of that. So
wow.
That's the truth. That is what they do. To the extent that I have to be careful where I go, who I'm with, what I'm doing, because I don't want to find myself in a situation where I'm back in there. Do you get what I'm trying to say? All because of the back of somebody else's, you know, being a liability, you know, and it's just about collateral, minimizing collateral damage.
Definitely.
So just seeing your surroundings and being like, yeah. And that's another reason why I'm on this podcast. So that's another reason why I'm open to talking about my story, because a lot of men in there right now in prison, they don't have a voice. We don't have a voice. We're silenced. Do you get what I'm trying to say? All you see is a big wall. You walk past, you're not even thinking there's 2-3 men sitting in the space of a bathroom, eating, shitting, and watching TV at the same damn time. Especially in this heat. Do you get what I'm saying?
Smaller than this room.
Way smaller. It's probably the size of here. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's all of that is trauma. All of that is psychological effect, and especially as men, because I'm sure like there's an increase in suicides amongst men right now. Yeah. So imagine you as a man, not able to open up your mouth, not able to reason, not able to say or do what you feel, or being restricted to how you should carry yourself and be because of what the volatile environment you're in. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
So you almost have to censor yourself so you're not perceived in a certain way by everyone else.
There
you have
go.
to keep a certain,
there you
right,
go.
it's, what would you say, survival mode almost?
It is survival mode. It is. But sometimes survival mode, if you don't know how to balance it out, can be a path to self-destruction. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Hence why you see some people go to prison, and then even if it's for a day, for some people it's enough to change their life. Do you get what I'm saying? Let alone now talk of 18 years, 10 years. Do you get what I'm saying? I know cases of people, and people I've personally met, you know, that have got into a fight at Tesco's for nicking bread, so the security guard jumped on them, blah blah. 6 month and IPP tariff, so it's the sentence, the minimum sentence he's allowed to serve before he can come home. He's done 14 years, and he's still in there now. cases like that. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Wow.
So this is what they're not. This is the side of the story they're not that you don't hear about. And it was David Blunkett, if I'm correct, the Labour MP. I'm sure it's him.
Right.
The blind, he's blind. Yeah.
Right.
So he's the one that introduced IPP. He's the one that pushed it.
Because I think that's something that needs to be turned over, because mistakes are made across the board, you know. And I think something like that is detrimental, because in your case, you were 16 when this happened, which is still a child.
Yeah.
And actually, you have a further backstory to that, is that you were actually offered a plea, right?
Yeah.
To do 6 months if you just pled guilty. And you, like you say, you weren't guilty. So you said, I'm going to fight this. And that turned into you being tried as an adult and then being, what was it, sentenced to 18 years plus IPP serving 10. And now you're still basically serving your sentence because you that's, you were a child when this happened. So right or wrong, you know, at the age of 16, we can all look back at 16 and understand that, wow, there are certain decisions we made then that we wouldn't make now.
100%.
Yours just had greater consequences, but you're still paying for that over nearly 2 decades later.
Yeah, literally. I still, literally, that is the truth. And another thing about it is as well, is that as a child, going through that sentence, there was also doing like psychological reports. So before I was going up for parole hearings. So this was something that they was doing for pretty much every IPP prisoner. So to an extent, we was like being targeted. Do you know what I'm saying? We was being exploited. That's the truth of the matter. There's not one person, real person, not even real. You could even just be a general human being that's just that knows how to feel and understand empathy. Do you get what I'm saying? And understanding and all these other type of things to know that, of course, this sentence is wrong. It's been abolished. However, they don't want to overturn it in retrospect. So there's still people serving it now.
Right.
Yeah. So.
So they can so you can no longer be sentenced to IPP. But if you've already been sentenced to IPP, they're not going to wipe it.
No.
Similar to marijuana now being legalized, but if you're serving time for it, you're not. Wow.
Yeah. So all of these other things. So moving on from that.
Legalized in the US.
In the US, yeah. So yeah, and there's still prisoners serving for it in America. Yeah. So moving on from that, you're then now, as I understand it, a man or even the human brain is not fully developed till like 25, where you plus to your characteristics and you understand yourself and all these other type of things. I was nowhere near the age of 25. I was nowhere near the age of knowing who I was as a man, if that makes sense, like fully. Do you get what I'm saying? So to have an adult come along and then do a psychological report on me and say, oh yeah, because you think like this or because you behave like this, you now have to do 100 courses before you can go home. And those 100 courses, some of them, basically there's several years for the waiting list. So now you're going to go past your initial tariff and sit down for several more years because the system doesn't have the facilities or the resources for you to be able to do the courses as soon as. And then once you have done it, they then want a consolidation period, which is probably another 6 months to a year, where they want to see if the courses you've learned like is shown in your behavior and the environment that you're in. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And then if you got into a situation, let's say altercation in prison as an IPP prisoner, that's literally your freedom. That could be your freedom gone. 9 times out of 10 it is. So I could get into something with you, but you've got your release date, your determinate sentence.
Right.
So that which means there's nothing no one can do when your day of release comes.
Right.
They have to open the door. As an IPP, you're going parole hearing. Then they're going to want to ask, okay, so you've already served what you get into. What was the circumstances surrounding that? And of course, I get it. They want to talk about minimizing risk factors. So they want to see if you can identify what your risk factors are. Because there is some people that, in terms of thinking, they don't have no thinking skills. So they're not able to identify their behavior. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Or their thoughts. However, if you're putting everyone in a pot and mixing it,
you take into account the environment, and whilst obviously you're responsible for your own actions and what you do, so when you do stand in front of that parole board, it's what have you done. You have to take into account, well, what is my environment, how I may have ended up in that situation. And I think using discernment to see someone's mindset and characteristics, and you need to separate that from the certain actions or situations they might have been put in at the time. And I think instead of people kind of being judged by their character in addition to their actions, they're just like, on paper, right, this is what you got into. No, back again.
Literally.
That's definitely that's a whole nother podcast, really, to be honest with you, because there's a lot wrong with the system. But taking yourself into account and your personal scenario, so serving 10 years mentally, emotionally, faith, what did that period look like for you? Who was Shola as a person during that time?
Growth. That's who I was. I was growing. And everything I was doing, I was growing. You know, initially when I even entered the system on that sentence, I got into a lot of whatever, you know, what prison or the system will call subculture. So they say, I was heavily involved in the subculture of prison, which is like the other side, where they're saying you're getting involved in all type of whatever. And I was getting into scraps and situations, and I don't take no check, me personally, you know. I've always been someone that
you'll hold your own.
I'll hold my own from a young age. So now being put in that environment, you have to be on your guard more so. You got to be, do you know what I'm saying? Not to say it means you're looking for trouble or anything like that. You just need to be able to protect yourself. Do you know what I'm saying? Because every day in there and every hour and every minute is a test. It is a test, and it's a pressure pot. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And the reality of it is, like, prison is its own world. The same way you have a boss out here, or you go to work, or you have a routine or a schedule and all these other things there, and there's that respect for just life in itself. There's got to be that respect in prison. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So, and remember, you're dealing with a lot of egos, especially amongst men, a lot of egos. So, you got to be a boss in your own right, in terms of your own emotions and your own thinking skills and how you carry yourself. Do you get what I'm trying to say? You know, and be able to just respect each other's boundaries. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And be able to identify another man's boundaries. Do you get what I'm saying? Without it overstepping. And then it should be vice versa. It's when it's not vice versa, is when it's all the craziness goes off. So for me, it was just growth. From there, I got transferred to a few other prisons for whatever reasons. And, you know, it was just, for me, it was just a time where I was like, you know what, this is long. I've sat here X amount of years. Like, there's time for a change. Do you know what I'm saying? And I remember, I keep always talking about this woman, Alison Smith, but she'll never understand how much of an impact she had on my life. Because, my mum grew me, and you know, church and all these other things and faith, and, you know, you get, to an extent, I was getting dragged to church. So I feel like that's the majority of us young kids. Like, when it comes to church, we get dragged.
You were just there by force at that time, not by choice.
Not by choice, exactly that. So, being in this particular prison is like one of the most notorious prisons in the country. That's where I met her. And, you know, this woman, with the little resources that she had, she was able to bring churches from all over the country to come in every Sunday, sing, all these other things. And then for me is how I guess I just reconnected my relationship with a big man. Do you get what I'm saying? And from there I just started applying myself. So, you know, outside of my faith, I was reading, you know, always reading. I think I've read at least over 100 books while I was in that place.
Wow. And it shows, by the way, because when you speak, like, honestly, your level of intelligence and understanding, and even sometimes you find when people serve a long time in jail, say for example someone went to jail in 2009, or let's take it back slightly, let's say 2006, and then they came out in 2020, they're still in 2006 when they come back out, like the way they speak, their mindset, their understanding of how the world works, they're stuck in that time zone, because when they were locked up, they were just locked up on pause almost. But with yourself, it's like you're very still, like hearing you speak and just the things you say and your understanding and grasp on life, it shows just through the books you were reading, and that's a choice you made to invest in yourself whilst you were inside.
Yeah, of course.
What made you choose that?
I think even not just if I was putting myself outside, it would just be for my mum. You know, like the woman was tired. You know, like I'm seeing her on visits and you could tell she's not herself. So if you're a man about yours, and you're saying you're out here chasing dreams, you're saying you're out here doing better, being better, if your family's not at the center of it, then what's it all for? Do you get what I'm trying to say? And my family was at the center of all of it, good and bad. So that for me was like, yeah, I need to switch it up, you know, and then the prayers as well, you know. If you as a man can surrender to the big man and say, rah, I've made mistakes and certain other things, then I think that alone is powerful.
He guides you from there.
Yeah. And, you know, whatever your belief is, even if you believe in the stars and the moon, like, if you're not willing to surrender and just say, rah, you know what, I acknowledge all of this, it's because of you. Do you get what I'm saying? So that was it. You get what I'm saying? So that, family, and then, yeah, back to myself, just within myself. Do you get what I'm saying? You know, Einstein said, Ralph, if you're, the definition of craziness is if you're doing something over and over again, that's not working.
Different results.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not working. So, you know, so for me, it's like, Rob, I've seen a lot. So it's like, yeah, there's if I can be and see and do all of that over there, then how much so for God's kingdom, if that makes sense. Like how much so for my life, do you know what I'm saying? How much so for my family's life? How much so in terms of that good energy, that positiveness, you know? That was it for me. It was like that balance. It was that crossroads, you know what I'm saying? So
you had a choice to make.
Yeah.
You chose purpose, basically.
Yeah, fully.
To make sure that what you were going through was actually not in vain.
Yeah.
And it shows in what you're doing in this present day, which we will unpack shortly. But for me, I feel like from what I see from you and hear from you is you were chosen. There's an anointing, honestly, on the way you speak and the journey you are on now. Not only, and I'm sure the people can see the fitness, best looking PT, you know, Harriet, you know what I'm saying? But even with that, that takes a very strong level of determination and discipline. And believe me, I know that from myself. I've been on a fitness journey 2.5 years now, and I know that there's days that you don't even want to go to the gym. You like everything he says, nah, but you go. And for you, I think it's partially obviously the work you're doing with your foundation, which we're going to speak about, but also just keeping your mental intact on the fitness element of things, and then having that prayer. And I can see how all the chips align that produces the Shola that we're here today, because you said at age 16 that situation changed your life, and actually I think it, more of a better word, shaped your life. It was a situation you were put in, but it was actually rather than what a lot of people would look at as a setback or something to restrict you, it actually set you up in life to become what you're about to be, because what the testimony you carry, the journey you're on now, and where that's going to take you, and the amount of lives you're going to impact off the back of it, that's what purpose is, and that's what God's, do you know what I mean? His purpose for us is that sometimes you go through certain things and you could be angry, like IPP, I'm locked up for life, basically, or you can go, right, all right, this is where I am now, use me. I know that the God we serve isn't going to have you go back behind bars. As long as you follow what he, we chop it up with God. So God's always going to give us a trace. That if you end up behind bars, it was not him, it was you. But that's not going to happen. We rebuke that in Jesus' name. But what he does is he uses every life experience and every situation that we're put in, turn all things around for your good. That is the God that we serve, and then he would also use that to impact the lives and shape the lives of others. And what I love about your journey and the way you speak is the way you actually glorify God, because that's also what he wants, is that we glorify him. People look at, maybe church people or religious people, and they have a certain connotation of what that means, and I'm a big believer in, it's not about religion, it's more for me about faith. It's about God himself, not Christianity, not what the church expects of you. It's about that relationship between you and God, and serving him in the way that he's spoken to you to serve him. And that's why everyone's walk looks different. Someone might be in a strip club and still be just as connected with God as the person who's the pastor over there, because everyone's journey is different. And I'm a huge believer in God will just meet you where you're at, and eventually we all get the same understanding, and do you know what I mean, we're singing off the same hymn sheet. So with you, I love how you've applied your faith to your journey. And one story in particular that I'm going to ask you to unpack for us is your parole hearing, where you were sent for parole. It wasn't really looking like you were going to come out. So walk us through that.
So at the time, I'd already been to 3 parole hearings. So parole is basically, you go up in front of a panel. They're an independent board that basically work outside of the justice system. So they are within the justice system, but they're not under the justice secretary. So basically the secretary, they advise the secretary as to whether he should be released or not. So they make a recommendation, and 9 times out of 10, unless the secretary has a reason to say no, then they listen and sign off the papers for you to be released. So basically, I'd already gone to 3 parole hearings, and the way it also goes is that you have a probation officer who manages your behavior and puts together a plan for your release and risk assessments and all this type of stuff, where you're going to stay, work, all of these other things, because obviously they don't want you to reoffend. So which is the ethos that they sit on, and it's about, they say it's about resettling you back into the community and changing your life around. Whether they got the funds for that is another thing. Do you get what I'm saying? So then you have an inside probation who basically comes along and talks about what your behavior's been like in prison and XYZ and all this other type of stuff. And then basically my mum even came a couple of times, because you can have actually someone outside of all of this in terms of support network to come and thing. And leading up to that particular parole hearing, I'd had 3 prior parole hearings where I was always recommended for release, always was spoken of highly, no reason to basically say no. And what happened was I got no 3 times. And the truth to me, and what I believe it is they're just moving the goalposts. So they could say they've got a set of targets for you, you meet those targets, you get there and everyone's saying, yeah, he should go home. However, someone on the panel will then, because it's like a voting thing, so you don't even get the answer on that day. So you just go and give your best performance, and then they leave it to you, and then you leave it to them, and then they will come back to let you know what they're... And that's within 14 days. So that's 14 days of sleepless nights. Am I going home? Am I not? And the process takes about 6 months before you actually even sit in front of the parole board, before you actually have your day. Sometimes it goes over that. More time it does go over that, because then there's a backlog, because there's other people waiting for parole dates. So then the parole board have to fit in. Then they're situated all over the country to go to different prisons. And if you miss your parole date for whatever reason, or the panel member's sick or whatever, and they're talking about rescheduling it, they're not rescheduling it next week, they're rescheduling it in a few more months. So you're now having to go back to your cell and sit down for another 6 months or a year just so that they can now say, all right, we're all free on this particular day to hear if you can go home or not. So you're now putting me back, and bearing in mind you've served your sentence.
So this is post so you're supposed to be released at this point, but you just need to get the okay from them. But waiting for that okay can take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months.
And it might not even be guaranteed.
Right.
So you might even do a further long time.
Wow.
Literally for nothing. So they might even just say, no, we don't, we want him to do another course, or we want this to happen, or transfer him to over here so we could see what his behaviour is like.
Behave amongst others,
and all that type of stuff. So it's always a test, and prisons categorise. You have A cat, B cat, C cat, D cat. The lower you go, the lower the security is within the prison. So D cat's the lowest, where you come home for a week or two and work out in the community. C cat is like preparing you for that. So you might be out within like your landing. They might lock it at a particular time a bit later. And then B cat and A cat is high security. Do you know what I'm saying? Dogs and all this other type of stuff, and it's just all crazy. So, and even then, it's just a system within a system. Does that make sense? So you got to go through all of that before.
So do you have to be in DCAT before you can get a parole hearing?
It used to be like that. So before you can even look at being released, because you can still have your parole hearing, you don't have to actually be in a DCAT.
Right. Okay.
So you can have your parole hearing in an A cat, B cat, C cat. However, it's the lower category you're in, the more likely you are to go home.
Go home, right?
Do you know what I'm trying to say? Whereas if you've been in a B cat for like several years, B cat is highly volatile. It's not really a trusted environment.
And you're more likely to then get into situations which are going to show on your record, which make the probation, parole board say anyway.
All parties. All parties, unless so sometimes you would even have to. Your inside probation would actually have to go and investigate. So if I got into a fight now, she would have to then go meet an officer that may have witnessed it or looked at CCTV and all these other things, and then they, adjudication, which is like being arrested, and then you have to go up in front of the governor. So you have to go. It's like a mini court. So you now have to go in front of the judge, and then he weighs up the evidence and then says, okay, you're guilty or you're not guilty. You know what I'm saying? And then your punishment can be anything from several days in solitary confinement to several months.
Wow.
Do you get what I'm saying? I've done months in solitary confinement where you're sat in a cell on your own with no nothing. There's nothing in there in terms of comfort. Just 4 walls and a metal bed. Do you get what I'm saying? And a blanket. That's it. You come out for 15 minutes, 5 minutes to have a shower, 5 minutes to use the phone, 5 minutes to get fresh air. Then you're placed back in. So
you're locked up for basically the entire 24 hours?
Yeah.
You were in there for how long?
The longest I've done at one particular time was 6 months. Yeah.
What was your how did you mentally get through that?
I think I read the whole of the Bible at that time.
That was God telling you, sit down, child, we got to get to know each other.
Yeah, I leave you by quiet waters. Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's the only book that would have lasted long enough to get you through the 6 months and to give you what you need, to be honest, because that's mad.
Yeah, and that is
mad.
Yeah.
That's testament to your mental strength, though.
Yeah, my sister says it all the time.
Wow.
So on this particular time, surpassing all of that, because I was very early on when I was messing around my sentence, but moving on from that, I got to the 4th parole hearing. I was in DCAT. I'd already done everything they'd asked me to do, and I remember on the day, my solicitor said, I don't think the parole board is going to want to hear hear you today. So I was like, what were you talking about? I'd already waited 9 months to even...
And this is post your release date?
And this is post my release date. Or post my eligibility date for release, as they say. So by then, I was only meant to do like 2 years of that sentence. I ended up doing 7 years. So let's get to maybe year 3 or year 4 where I've long time been eligible. So every year I've now had a parole coming up to this time. So on this particular time I was on my 7th year, and I'd gone for parole, and my solicitor said, yeah, I don't think they want to hear it. So I said, what do you mean they don't want to hear it? She's like, yeah, however, if you do take this opportunity and they don't give it to you, then you're gonna have to do another 18 months. So I'm like, raw, another 18 months. I said, all right, let me phone my mum. I phoned my mum, I couldn't get through to her. So I phoned my sister. And she said, bro, I'll be real with you. You just gotta go to your prayer closet. Like if ever a time you need to call on my man, yeah, you need to call him now. So I just did that. I said, all right, cool. I just said a short prayer to God, and I just said, yo, like, just take control, innit? Do you get what I'm saying? Just like, we've been here, I've done it, I'm tired. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm tired. Like, this is gonna be the 4th one. This is 7 years later, a 2-year sentence. I've now done 5 more years. Like, what more do they want from me? And yeah, so that happened. I phoned back my solicitor. I said, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead with it regardless. I'm going for it. She said, all right, cool. And they, but at the time it was video call, Zoom and or whatever they done it as. And I remember at the time when they were sending the newsletters out, saying that the parole board system is changing because obviously you had the epidemic and all.
Pandemic
and all these other things.
Yeah.
So now there's a whole shift in the system. Now imagine it's like the train system. Never early, always delays, always severe delays, always rail works, all these type of things, yeah. And now they're telling you that they're bringing a whole new hole of change into the system. Think how long it will take for that whole change to come in. And now think of how many people is now waiting for that change to come and how it's going to affect them. So this is what the situation I was in. I was in a pandemic of my own. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And basically the parole ratio at the time is they can release you on paper or by face-to-face or by now introducing video calls and whatever. But the amount of people that they was releasing on paper was very slim. People was fighting to see them face to face because then you can argue your point and
they
show
get
how
to see in a room.
In a room, like face to face, is this person sincere or not, or whatever it is they want to weigh up. So if you wasn't getting it, because sometimes the parole board wouldn't even see you face to face. It wasn't like your God-given right. So if you weren't seeing them face to face and your paperwork wasn't squeaky clean,
which is highly unlikely
anyway. They're not hearing you, so yeah, sit down for another year or 2 and we'll come back to you. Or go DCAT, sit there for 2 years, which is the minimum time that allows you to tell you to sit there for, and then they come and see you and then go, oh no, maybe you haven't been home enough, so come back in another 6 months. So these are the things that go on. Do you know what I'm saying? So and I've gone into the hearing. And I just kept it real, you know. I just kept it real. They was asking me about situations such as why do I believe I was being targeted, or why do I believe X, Y, Z, just different things, you know, or what was my plans for when I come home, what's my support network looking like, what's my long-term plans, short-term plans. And I just spoke from the heart, man. And just said, look, this is what I want to do. This is where I am. I remember I even went in there with my business plan at the time, and you know, and then like I said, 14 days later, or sleepless nights, I get the call to say, yeah, I'm going home. And then you got to wait for a hostel, you know, and go through that process. And the hostel is like somewhere you have to stay prior to you being able to actually just go home. So you're still even doing more tests.
Waiting.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sitting down waiting, then get out, then you now have to go to a hostel. Now you're on a curfew, which means you have to be back in the building at a particular time of the night. So you do several more months of that, and then it's just, yeah.
And to zone in on that just slightly, so that parole hearing was coming up. Your solicitor said, doesn't even really make sense to even go because they're probably not even going to see you. They don't want to hear it today. You rang your sister for some support, rang your mum's sister. She said, bro, talk to God. It's not in our hands at this point. So you went, you prayed. Like your solicitor said, very unlikely, but you prayed on it anyway. you went to go to the parole hearing, which it was you plus 3, so it was 4 people that went to go to the parole hearing.
So it would have been 3 of the parole members, it was me and my solicitor, and then my outside probation, and then my inside probation, so...
No, I mean the people that were eligible for parole at that time. There was a few of you, right?
Yes, on that day, yes. About 3, 4 other guys, yeah.
And you were the only ones to have been released out of the 4 or 5 of you that went for parole that day. That's the power of prayer, for sure. Because especially during COVID, where options for anyone coming out of prison would have been few. Anyway, options are few. So under a pandemic where everyone's actually just locked up at home, job opportunities are probably not there. Getting settled back into, do you know what I mean, into the world during that time would have been difficult. So naturally, you would have expected them to go, nah, now is not the time.
I'm glad you even said that. Sorry to cut you. I'm even glad you said that, because that is what was brought up in the hearing. That was very much brought up over and over again. But it's pandemic. Like, how are you gonna, like, you know, do this? How are you gonna earn this? How are you gonna, like, there ain't no jobs out here. There ain't no, you know, so in terms of your family, how are you gonna be supported? Because they're going through a pandemic. So all of that. So I'm glad you made that point. And I remember feeling like that as well. Like, raw. Do you get what I'm saying? But yeah, all thanks be to the big man. Yeah, he came through for sure. Because two of the guys actually refused their parole hearing that day. They said, "All right, cool. I'm not gonna have it because I don't want to lose that opportunity to go home and I'll come back, however many months later." But nah, not me.
You went with faith.
Yeah,
and I'll tell you what. If there was ever a time that they could have been justified in making a decision to stay, it would have been that time, to be honest with you, because realistically, life itself says now is not the time for you to go back outside, basically. But that's just the God that we serve. So I wanted to, definitely wanted you to talk about that, because just little things like that, where applying that faith, it just moves mountains, honestly. It takes things out of your hands, because you go on your own merit and you try and fight that or argue your case while I'm ready to go out. You stumble on your words, you're nervous, but you got, Lord, speak through me at this point, because I need to, you know my situation, I need to get out of here. And that's exactly what happened, and you were set free. Amen. 2 things I want to ask you, because we won't dig into it too deeply, but you were then recalled eventually after that, right? For something you didn't do, which you could prove. However, they weren't listening to you. Finally, the proof was brought to light. It turns out you were innocent. You spent a further, was it 8 months that you went back and spent innocently? And that's, is that because of IPP? That's insane. That's insane. But we won't go into that too much, because I do want to go into all of the positive things you're doing. But something I want to ask you before that is, do you think if you were released before you were, you would be the Shola you are today?
That's a very good question.